Hey Rebels, last year we hosted the launch of a Star Wars book known as Droidography. It was wonderfully illustrated and interactive, complete with pull tabs and flipbook extras built into it. The artwork itself was done by a local graphic artist named Joel Hustak. You might remember him from an earlier episode on the podcast. I myself bought a copy of the book for my son, and Joel autographed it for him. We still got it on the shelf, and my little guy loves it. A few months later, we were discussing the development of a brand new beer called Night Viper. I suggested to Mark that we get Joel to design art for the label. I'd seen his work online, and I felt the tone and the attitude fit well with the style of our beer and what we were trying to envision with the art. In less than a week, we're going to be launching Night Viper in cans across the province, and you'll get to see the label that Joel designed. Joel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's awesome.
How's it going?
Pretty good, yeah.
So, we got Night Viper in the can. What did you think when I first came to you and said, hey, we want to get your art on the can?
Well, I was really excited because it's something I've always wanted to do. I feel very fortunate because I feel like I've worked on a wide variety of different like entertainment products or things like that, from TV, books, comics, and things like that. So, but a beer can was always sort of on my bucket list. I even thought of doing a sort of a homebrew label because my brother brews quite a bit, but it always seemed kind of just a little like who would actually see it, only us kind of thing, you know, and maybe a couple of friends. But it's really cool to do a beer that will be shown to the whole public and everything like that. So it'll be awesome.
How many hours did you spend making this one?
Oh, I'm always bad for that because I tinker around quite a bit, and I should log my hours quite a bit more, but it was probably, I want to say like maybe 20 hours, maybe less. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
But it is a fairly complex piece of art.
Yeah, I went quite detailed with it, and I cleaned it up quite a bit because I want it to be a really real showcase piece, and when you blow it up to poster size, I want it to look really cool. And so it is quite polished up, I would say, to a degree.
Do you want to do the honors of kind of describing it to our guests?
Sure, yeah. So it's a very retro style UFO image, very high in saturation and contrast, so it really pops off the can. Basically, there's a UFO hovering over a prairie landscape, and it's burning a hop cone into the grass, into the wheat field, basically. And yeah, it's got like a glass globe on the top of the UFO, and it has an eyeball, and you kind of get the impression that it's like a larger monster that's sort of maybe encompassing this UFO. And there's a huge galaxy that's spiraling behind them, which sort of introduces a lot of interesting colors like purples and maybe some greens and some other blues and stuff like that.
Everybody I've shown the draft artwork to just raves about it. They're like, oh my God, when is this beer coming out? And I'm like, I just want this poster on my wall.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's really cool. Even Mark, he's like, it doesn't matter what the beer tastes like. People are just going to want to buy it to collect that piece of art. I'm wondering are you going to be having that art? Like, are you going to put it on a poster and offer it on your website or anything?
That's a good idea. I haven't really considered it 100% yet. I am updating my website pretty soon. Like I'm just kind of brainstorming certain things, and so I do want to sort of go through a new print shop, and I'm sort of figuring that stuff out right now. But yeah, haven't fully considered it yet. Yeah.
Last time we talked, you had discussed that you had done some Game of Thrones stuff and some Star Wars. Is there any new big projects besides Rebellion coming up on the horizon?
This past summer, I did a Star Wars cookbook that was pretty cool. It was actually the same publisher that I did the Droidography book for that you mentioned earlier. And this one's going to be pretty awesome because it's based on the Star Wars theme park in California. And it's basically all the different foods that you could get at the theme park, so all the different stalls and stuff like that. And so I had the job of illustrating those stalls and sort of bring them to life rather than just having, pure photography throughout the thing. all the dishes and the drinks and stuff that have the recipes are all photographs, but the part where we describe the world and stuff like that, that's where I come in and sort of I did a 11-page sort of section that illustrates that.
Is it kind of like an immersive experience?
Well, I haven't seen the book just yet, but from what I get from some of the preview images and then some of the stuff that I was a part of, it's basically, I think it will be kind of immersive. Like, I think there will be a little bit of story, but then have all it'll be like a traditional recipe book, cookbook. And so you'll have all the recipes, but then I think there'll be a little bit of extra flavor to describe where the stuff comes from and stuff like that. Yeah.
I know I'm going to pick up a copy.
Yeah, for sure.
Get you to autograph it, put it beside the other cookbooks.
Absolutely. It comes out November.
In November?
Yeah. I don't know exactly when we'll get it at Comic Readers, but November, like 5th, I want to say, is the Amazon release date.
So what is the biggest project you'd like to tackle next? You said you had a bucket list. You got your beer can bucket list done?
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many things on the bucket list still. The next thing coming up right now for me that I'm thinking about is Inktober, which is basically this online phenomenon where artists all over the world participate in this, and they have to basically do an ink drawing once a day throughout October. And a guy named Jake Parker started this, and there's like thousands of people that join in now, and they hashtag it so you can kind of follow along and see everybody's contributions. And it's just kind of it's nothing like, I think some people sell their drawings and maybe make prints and stuff like that, but it's more of just like a artistic challenge and sort of like an exploration thing, and just to see how consistent you can be. And it's a way to sort of commit yourself to something as well. If maybe you're not drawing every day, or if you need to challenge yourself on subject matter every day, drawing something new and different every time. So some people come up with like prompt lists, and there's like an official list that Jake Parker comes out with, and it's just like varying science fiction, or it doesn't have to be science fiction or fantasy, but usually people do that kind of themes. But it's just like a 1 word per day, and you can either illustrate that or do whatever you want, really.
What do you think you're going to do? You're going to go for the standard list or make your own?
I'm going to go for the standard list. This is probably my first year that I commit to it. In the past, I've just kind of dabbled. It kind of depends on like what my prior commitments are, because sometimes it would be nice to do it, but it doesn't fit in, sort of. But I'm going to try to plan to do it all the way through, and I'm going to do the prompt for sure.
What's unique about the ink medium? Because don't you usually do digital?
Yeah, so a lot of my artwork is digital. I do dabble with a lot of different mediums throughout the years, but consistently most of my professional work is digital. But the ink thing is really to sort of push you out of your comfort zone a little bit. Some people might lay down some preliminary sketching with like a light pencil or something like that, but I think a lot of them just go straight in with ink. And it's sort of, in a way, it's a little scary to do that, but in another way, it's really freeing and really meditative, because you kind of just have to accept mistakes, because there's no going back. I mean, you could restart, but then that's not, like, early on in the process of when I was learning artwork, I learned about this sort of all-in ink technique and stuff like that, and I found it very freeing, because you basically just, I tried to never give up on a drawing like that, and I tried to just make the best out of like a mistake and kind of make it into sort of a happy accident or things like that, or just try to cover things up a little bit as you go along. And it sort of gives you that extra confidence, because it sort of makes it that mistakes aren't really mistakes, they're just part of the process. It's something you have to modify as you go along and stuff like that. And so that kind of mentality translates throughout all your artwork if you start approaching it like that. It makes you more confident.
And that's kind of the value you derive from Inktober?
I think, yeah, and I think a lot of people derive from that. I think maybe people see, there's a lot of different aspects. There's also the creativity, having to come up with a new concept for this prompt every day, and trying to like come up with something original based on that prompt, because it'll be sort of very generic things. I haven't really checked out the prompt too much this year, but it might just be one of the words for a day could be dragon or like circle or something like that. So, but you have to think outside of the box and make something cool out of it, right?
When it comes to drawing, I can usually get like one eye looks pretty good, and the other one just looks like trash.
Yeah.
There's no symmetry. It just looks like garbage. I'm like, screw this. I just throw it in the garbage.
Well, one of the things that I was taught regarding that kind of symmetry is using, like, start building up one side and then use your peripheral vision to draw the other eye. So maybe you're looking in between the eyes, like at the nose, sort of, and you're drawing the other eye. And so you're sort of looking at both eyes at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe not all the details using your peripheral, because you might need more focus for that, but just the blocking in stage, just kind of, that's what you do a lot as an artist, is using peripheral vision and sort of trying to simplify how you look at things.
And hands. Hands are like a nightmare to me. I can never get proportions right, angles right, the shadows, the knuckles. It just looks like junk.
Yeah. I mean, hands are most artists' nightmares unless they've taken a lot of time to improve their craft at hands. But it's always a challenge, that's for sure.
Every time I see trying to draw hands, I'm like, oh, that's why Mickey Mouse wears gloves.
Yeah.
Walt Disney's like, F this. Gloves.
Well, and there's a lot you can learn from those Disney hands, because they have, like, those cartoons have so much expression in them and hands and everything. That's what hands are all about. Is there like another window into the character besides, their face or their eyes? Their hands like tell a lot about them.
Like what? Like, can you give me an example of a character that would have hands that you would notice?
Oh, I mean, just any good artist that's drawing good hands. I can't think of a particular character, but it's just like even acting or things like that, like, or just people in general. Like you can tell if they're like stressed, or if it's like a tender moment, like a love moment where there's like two characters holding hands or something, or if it's like more of an aggressive thing or something. You can just kind of, there's a lot you can read into, basically. And I would say that probably good movies would have all that kind of stuff. Like, I just mentioned the animation in particular because they have to exaggerate things quite a bit, and they often have really good gestures to their hands, and so that's kind of like a simplified version of how you could make like a more realistic hand look good, is taking those things that they distill into their cartoonized hands.
So I'm going to change track a little bit here. You want to jump into some beer?
Yep, sounds good.
So this one is the Rebellion Fest beer. I believe it's 4.6% ABV, light, crisp, malty, but not as malty as, say, last year's version. Less sweet, but still refreshing. Ready to give her a try?
Yep, sounds good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
What do you think?
It's good. I like it has a good nose to it, I think.
As I get more and more experienced with beers, you come back to the simpler stuff, and you talk to the brewers and you realize that doing something that's really, really simple is actually really, really hard. You can't hide behind your mistakes with a lightly hopped beer. Everything that goes wrong comes out
Right.
in a lighter beer.
Yeah, you want, like, this tastes very clean and crisp, I would say. And drinking some of the more simple beers that are out there, like the more mass-produced stuff, they taste very fake and sort of lots of, I don't know, preservatives or something in it. I don't know what, but it tastes like there's something different about it. There's something extra. But this, you can tell it's like cleaner, basically.
It could come from the filtering process. It could come from how old the beer is. This is fairly fresh. I think we kegged this about 5 days ago. So it's hard to get much fresher than that.
Yeah, that's what I enjoy about it. That's for sure.
Did you have the Fest beer last year?
I didn't know. I was in Europe around this time last year. So yeah.
In Germany?
Well, I went to Germany at the end of my trip, so that was like in November. Yeah, I was more in France and Switzerland and England around this time.
Were you able to take in a lot of the local craft beers, or were you just too busy?
Well, I did here and there for sure. I went to I can't remember all the brewery names and things like that. I do remember in London, like, I had some Camden ones, and there was a lot of like cask ales that I had, but it's hard to remember all the names for sure. I just remember Camden because that's more of like a bigger beer around that area, right? So it was like in every place. I went to one like craft brew place in Nice, France, because that's where my brother's living now, and that was pretty cool. I like most of the beers I had in France were a lot like lighter beers and like blondes and things like that, and
Maybe something closer to like a champagne style ale,
yeah,
bubblier.
yeah. And so it was nice to go to this one craft brew house. We only found I only found it at the end because it was hard to, I guess, find it when it was open. Like it always seemed like they were on holidays or it was like closed this one day or that day or just it was always too late. But I think it was like right around my birthday we went, and it was a nice refreshing thing because we could get different kinds of beers that we wouldn't find like everywhere else, or like it's really simplified all the beers you can get there.
Would you recommend this beer to your friends?
I would, yeah, for sure. I mean, any Rebellion beer I would usually recommend, to be honest.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I think this one would go perfect with like pretzels, pulled pork, like salty, fatty food. If I was going to have like a big pork chop, some like smoked bacon, I think this is the beer that I would drink with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I dig it. It's going to be my go-to until it runs out.
Mm-hmm. It's really good.
By the time the snow falls, I'll be into stouts, but this is like the perfect fall beer.
Right. How's the pumpkin beer? I haven't tried that one yet. I saw some posts about it, though.
Pumpkin Fest sold out, I think, within like 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
5 hours. We only did 40 liters.
Yeah.
It was just an experimental batch for a potential future batch.
Oh, cool.
So what they did was they took the Fest beer as a base and then added tons of pumpkin spices to it.
Okay.
And originally when we started doing it, it was kind of like a gag. We'd be like, haha, this is so funny. But then it was so popular, we're like, oh, well, this might be a thing.
Right.
Kind of like Cat's Got the Cream, right?
Yeah.
We never expected Cat's Got the Cream to be this big popular beer. It was just a one-off. But consumer interest was so high, we had to, right? Mm-hmm. Rebels were demanding it, so.
Yeah, like I always try to try the different pumpkin beers that I come across because I don't enjoy all of them, but I want to enjoy them. So I just try to find the ones because some are too sweet or too spicy maybe. And then, yeah, but it's nice to find a one that's really good balance and kind of just more maybe not as sweet or something like that. Yeah, not as dessert beer, but just kind of very fall, like, yeah.
I've had a few sampler packs of like pumpkin ales, but I find once I get to like the third or fourth, I'm like, I'm not drinking any more of this fucking pumpkin.
Yeah, yeah. It's good to have maybe just one or, every now and then, but not.
I'll split one with my wife, maybe. I can't handle sweet anymore. There seems to be this dichotomy where beers were super, super IPA, bold, aggressive, bitter, and on the other direction, everybody went, let's go really, really sweet with lactose and cereal and sugar.
Like the milkshake beers. And
yeah, I can't get into them. Well, one, because lactose hurts me, but the sugar, I just find it cloying. And by the time I get halfway through like a really sweet beer, it's not enjoyable anymore. If I can't enjoy the full pint, I'm not going to spend that much money on it. It's just, it's just too much sweet.
That makes sense, yeah. No, I'd be the same way as well. I try not to drink sweet beers when I can, but if I'm stuck with one, I'll soldier through it, but maybe not order it again.
My wife's friends, they're all into wine.
Okay.
And they're like, oh, let's bring the husbands out for a beer tasting night instead of a wine tasting night. So they're like, okay, everybody bring a beer. And I brought some craft beer and this and that. Well, 4 of the couples out of like the 6 of them brought apricot beers.
Oh, no.
And we got to the second apricot beer. I'm like, I'm not drinking any of this fucking apricot anymore. I'm like, that.
I don't even think I've ever had an apricot beer. I don't think I would want to. Doesn't sound like my type
one's
of thing.
Enough.
Yeah, I'm usually pretty experimental. Like I'll try most of them, but with like fruit beers, I know I probably won't like it if it's too fruity. I I had those pineapple and mango sours. Like that's a little bit different for me. Like that's something I can get into. But like a strawberry beer or an apricot, like I don't know, it's not for me.
I was explained to me that stone fruit beers tend to hold up a little bit better. If you're taking something that is high in tannin, like a berry, choke cherry, Saskatoon, the boiling process kind of removes all the things you like about the berry and leaves that like hairy, dry, thick feeling on your tongue when you drink it. It's less pleasurable to drink. But stone fruits like cherries, nectarines, peaches, those things hold up a little bit better, and they complement rather than fight against everything else that's going on in the beer.
Yeah. Well, I like when if there's some like fruit beers where it's more in the background maybe, and not like oppressive. Like we're just trying to make a sweet beer that people who don't like beer can drink or something. You know, that's what I think of most fruit beers being like. And so if it's something that's more sort of mellow and complimentary, then that I would dig that for sure.
If you're drinking a mass market big branded beer and it's got a fruit flavor,
Yeah.
you're probably just drinking like a syrup or a sugar.
Yeah, right.
They've added something to the beer because fruit is really expensive. When you're getting up to that industrial scale, it makes the beer really unaffordable to sell. It's so expensive to produce that they're going to take shortcuts, or they're going to find ways to get that flavor as best they can or approximate it without actually blowing all that money on fresh fruit puree.
Yeah, I think that's what I was imagining. Like those kind of what you described there is the stuff I don't like.
One of the things you can do is if you have a beer, you can just take a dab of it and rub it on the space, the webbing between your thumb and your index finger, let it dry, and then smell it. And that will unlock a lot of the aromas. Even if you have bad breath, you know, if you're like, oh, do I have bad breath? You can do that, and you can tell if you have bad breath quickly. You can also tell with beers quite quickly. The aroma will come out. Some flawed beers, somebody was explaining to me, oh, this one has a nail polish character, and I'm like, oh, I'm not getting that nail polish, but maybe I'm not seeing it yet. And they told me to do that. Rub that a little drop of beer on the webbing of my finger, between my fingers, and then smell it when it dries. And I was like, oh man, that is really strong nail polish. And now I can't not taste it and not smell it. And they're like, yeah, there you go.
I'm curious to see what this next batch of Night Viper will be like, how spicy it will be. And if you guys ever do like multiple batches in the future, like will that spice change? Like say if you put in the same amount of peppers, maybe those peppers are spicier this year. Because you know how sometimes you have a jalapeno, it's not spicy, and you have another one, it's like really spicy. So I imagine that could change quite a bit. Like you get the same amount of peppers, but it's just a spicier.
Well, I was hanging out with Dave when he was pulling the peppers out of the box from Mexico, and he was wearing gloves. And he's like, don't touch your face if you touch one of these peppers. And I looked up at him like, you don't need to tell me twice, but I'm like, just remember to wash your hands before you go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And he's like, you only make that mistake once.
Right. Well, you were saying before, I think, that you have peppers to flavor it and peppers to give spice as well, two different kinds. Is that correct? Or maybe
I don't
misunderstood that.
I don't remember saying that.
No, okay.
Dave he took the peppers, he put them in the mash. They did their thing, extracted all that heat and flavor. And I think this next version, it's going to be heat and sweet. He's always going to be dialing it in to kind of get it to where he wants. The inspiration for the Night Viper for him was a trip to Mexico. He was there, he was getting coffee, and they had like a bar with ingredients, and you could just walk up and scoop all the ingredients that you wanted in. And so like chocolate and sugar, cream, and all these different spices, cinnamon, nutmeg. And that's what kind of inspired him to make this recipe. Mark gave him a direction. He said, I kind of want this. And then he set it up to Dave. And Dave had to really do the research and invent it and sand off those rough edges. So I think we did 2 test batches so far.
Yeah.
But once you're up on the big scale, 2,000 liters in a batch, then you're kind of like, you're giving her.
Right. Yeah. You're committing yourself to it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no turning back.
Yeah.
And we're going to put the chocolate in next week.
Oh, okay.
It finished fermenting, I think.
Oh, that's interesting. So you add the chocolate after. Is it sort of like a puree type thing, or what is it?
I believe it's a syrup.
Like a syrup, yeah.
Or not a syrup. Maybe it's a powder and they mix it.
The powder, yeah.
I haven't seen it. I'm going to be filming it and making a video. So I'm going to get some photos and stuff, and I'll let you know.
And so when is it going to be ready? It's like in cans and everything like that?
I can't remember now. It's sometime in October, right, Elise? 7.
It's scheduled to go out on the 7th.
The week of October 7th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So when this episode of the podcast airs, it should be
out
right
ready.
about then.
Yeah. That's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was going to be later in October, so it's nice to maybe see it earlier than I thought.
You want to launch your chocolate stouts and your stout beers kind of October, November, so then they have hang time for December, January, because that's when people typically drink dark beers. And we really kind of want this ready for Halloween. It's kind of hit that sweet spot. Just like, boom, here you go.
Yeah. No, it's going to be sweet, yeah. No pun intended. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for your time today.
For sure. Yeah, no problem.
It's great to catch up.
Thanks for having me on again.
Rebels, thanks for listening. I'm going to include links in the show notes so you can find more about Joel's art, and be sure to check out his brand new cookbook. What's the title of it?
But it's Galaxy's Edge is the theme park, so it's named after that.
Awesome. I'm picking up a copy. I'm also proud to let you know that the Rebellion Brewing podcast is an affiliate member of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. If you're into podcasts or looking for great content produced locally right here in our province, the Sask Podcast Network is for you. You can find it at saskpodcastnetwork.com. It's a great one-stop shop to discover local podcasts. As always, if you want to find the latest news about Rebellion Brewing, be sure to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Untapped. Thank you for joining the Rebellion.